Hey everybody, coming to you live once again from the Red Pill Expo here on Jekyll Island, and with me is David Martin. He is quite an incredible man. He's the chairman and the CEO of MCAM, which is a company so advanced and complicated, I'm not sure I even understand it yet, but he'll tell us a little bit about that. And he just gave a phenomenal speech about artificial intelligence and how AI has corrupted our ability to be corrupted. So we're honored to have you. Thank you very much for being here, David.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So first tell us a little bit about AI. What do you mean when you say that it corrupted our ability to be corrupted?
Yeah, well, let's start with intelligence. Most people don't realize intelligence was invented in the last couple hundred years. We used to have wisdom, we used to have knowledge, we used to have a lot of other things, but intelligence we didn't have. We literally made it up for the industrial economy. And what we tried to do is figure out how we can find individuals, optimize individuals, to be able to do routine system structures that allow us to actually routinize the human experience to the point where you are, either tailored for an industrial fabrication line, or you're tailored for engineering, or you're tailored for science, or you're tailored for medicine, or anything else. And the funny thing is, we defined intelligence by the capacity to synthesize not all things, but the things that were the approved narrative. Before that didn't define intelligence. Intelligence defined your ability to thrive in the ecosystem, thrive in the universe. Now it's how complicit can you be in the thing we want you to become. So when we add artificial to that, it's a very interesting paradox, right? We're making an artificial thing out of a thing that was artificial to start with, which I always find fascinating. When Elon Musk used to say, oh my God, AI is going to take over the world, I always laughed. Because I always said, we haven't even figured out what intelligence is in the 21st century. We have no idea what artificial versions of the thing we don't even understand is. But here's the problem. The problem is when we are told that it's technology and the technocracy that defines what health is, right? It used to be, health is, I got on my bike, I rode for 50 miles, and I felt great at the end. Tick the box, I'm healthy. Now, a PCR test in a land far, far away with scientists who've never been able to document the effectiveness of that test, in fact, couldn't get the test approved without an emergency use authorization. Now that test is going to determine that I get off my bike, rode 50 miles, feel great, I'm 53 years old, relatively healthy, and all of a sudden, I get a test that says, you're ill. Like, hold on a minute. No, I'm not. But here's the problem. When we see the world through the lens of a technology-mediated definition of what it means to be human, what it means to be healthy, what it means to be wealthy, what it means to be any of those things, the minute we actually replace that 12 sense capacity, the 12 cranial nerves that we have, and we get that out of the way, and then we get down to the 5 senses that we're supposed to authorize in the world, and then now we mask people, so we cover up 4 or 5 of the cranial nerves, which are the brain intelligence of the actual brain. So now we're left with eyes and ears. That's all we're left with. We don't have smell, we don't have taste anymore. We just got eyes and ears. That's all we have. Why? Because what we're being programmed to do is diminish the aperture through which we perceive the world. And as we diminish that aperture, we actually cannot even figure out what artificial or intelligence is.
That is absolutely fascinating, and I think it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose, but just incredible stuff. So I want to shift gears a little bit to the economy.
Yeah.
I know your company's involved in financial issues. What do you think about what's going on in the economy with the COVID shutdowns, the lockdowns, the money printing, the debt explosion? Where are we headed, and what can people do?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is this ship already sailed a long time ago. This sailed when we decided that the death denominated, and I said that the way I wanted to, death, not debt, the death denominated invention of the Federal Reserve, which was linking the intangible actuarial projection of how long you were going to be producing as a living being on this planet. The life insurance boom that happened from 1880 to 1910, which actually ran out of liquid assets to put money into, so they needed to create a way to synthetically create assets, giving rise to the impulse to actually get to Jekyll Island. And the story that nobody talks about. It's life insurers, not banks, that actually made the Fed impulse get started. 1904, the President Roosevelt mandate that said we had to figure out how to manufacture synthetic assets. You have a world in which we're living in a world that was defined by death. Our economy was defined by death. Not surprisingly, if you look at the last century, most of our economy has been denominated by pulses of violence around the world, a complex of not just military, but the entire structure, our healthcare system, denominated around the avoidance of death. Our entire defense mechanism is, where do we do wars? Where do we do this? The issue here is we actually are given the opportunity to watch the end of a death-denominated economy and the emergence, possibly, if we actually get our heads on straight, we actually may be able to architect for the first time, certainly in modern times and potentially ever, a life-defined economy. And so what my organization has been about is to actually start with human ingenuity. How do we get human ingenuity to get access to low-cost capital? Historically, what we've said is, that's private equity, that's venture capital, that's, friends, family, and fools. How do we move it into a world where you can actually use the one piece of currency every human being has, which is their God-given intellect? And how do we let that become the opening currency to enable commercial development, entrepreneurship, the access to capital and the access to markets?
And so that leads me right into my next question. Tell us a little bit about your company. What do you guys do, and why do you do it?
Yeah, so in 1998, there was a problem. Bank of America was consolidating all kinds of banks around the country, and they wound up consolidating all the 7(a) loan guarantees, the guarantees that the federal government makes to small business. And they became too big to fail as a potential credit risk to the U.S. government. So our company was formed as a GSE, a government-sponsored enterprise, but this is the first time it wasn't done through the government. And what we did was we served as the intermediary to bind Swiss Re reinsurance, AAA-rated paper, to collateral guarantees, which allowed a bank to look at intangible assets, patents, copyrights, trademarks, licenses, permits, executory contracts, whatever the intangible assets were, and we were able to make a credit enhancement by having a collateral guarantee that said if that particular borrower ever defaulted, we would actually step in and pay on a property casualty insurance level. We would pay for those assets. By doing that, the bank actually, for the first time in history, could use intangible assets as collateral and suddenly change their reserve capital structures that allowed them to lend to small business.
And so what did that do to improve the life of individuals or companies or the people
Well,
using
it doubled the lending capacity of banks to small business, dropped the requirement for venture capital by about the same proportion, increased the ability for actually small businesses to finally access traditional low-cost capital, essentially getting capital costs in the small business arena from the 14 to 16% credit cards that a lot of entrepreneurs use, some 18 to 20%. We were able to bring the cost of capital for small business down to somewhere between 400 and 600 basis points.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's about giving people the tools with capital to do what they can do, because most businesses don't operate at a margin that supports the cost of capital, right? Most businesses don't have a 40% margin or 30% margin. Great businesses get along at 8 and 10 and 15% margins. But if your cost of capital is 2 times that or 3 times that, no matter how good your business is, your margin doesn't cover your cost, you ultimately get penalized for being an entrepreneur. So we actually wanted to invert that process so that entrepreneurs had a equal access to capital.
That's amazing, David. It's been such a joy to speak with you. So where do people learn more about you, about your company, about this artificial intelligence subject? Where do you want to send people?
Yeah, so a couple places. About the company, mcam.com, m-cam.com. davidmartin.world is a way to find everything about me. David Martin World on YouTube, and my books, CUDA 12 and Lizards Eat Butterflies, and those are all places that people can learn a little more. And then the last thing, if you're really interested in going down kind of the capital markets rabbit hole that I like to talk about, invertedalchemy.com, my blog. It's been up since 2008, and it has some really interesting meat that most people don't know how to chew. So it's really fun. Invertedalchemy.com. But all that's through davidmartin.world.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being with us.
You bet.
Folks, you heard it here. That's David Martin. He's with MCAM. The speech here on artificial intelligence, as always, was amazing. Again, you won't find speakers like this all under one roof any place but the Red Pill Expo. Sorry you couldn't join us this year. Hopefully we'll see you next year. I'm Alex Newman. We're broadcasting live from Jekyll Island, and we'll be back with more very shortly. Thanks again, David.
You bet. Thanks.